After 36 hours of grueling travel, we're back for part 2 of my tour of Shenzhen's top 3D printing companies. In part 1, we visited LDO Motors, Creality, Big Tree Tech, BQ, and Physec, as well as a few of my initial impressions and conclusions. So if you haven't seen that video, you can check it out in a new tab by clicking up here. Though these aren't sequential, so feel free to watch them in any order. In this video, we'll get to see a bit more actual manufacturing. Plus, I'm going to try to pack in even more manufacturers and some more of my surprising realizations and conclusions. Feel free to use the chapters below to navigate. Now, let's get after it. After a fun weekend with the family, I started off Monday morning with a cab ride to Bambu Lab, which is the only company I visited located in the same trendy Nanshan district as I was staying. Bambu Lab's current offices are quite cramped though, so they'll be moving to a much bigger office in a month, I found out. When I got there, Candice, Jumbo, and Sean from the marketing team had converted the conference room into a makeshift filming studio so that I could get some B-roll footage of the product that you've probably seen them teasing for the last few days. So I'll have less work to catch up on when I get back to the studio. While I was initially very skeptical at the idea of, I have to admit that I'm super excited about, and especially the prospect of, and I'm really grateful to Bambu Lab for the incredible opportunity to collaborate with them on this. Oh, and make sure that you're subscribed with the bell icon clicked so you don't miss out when that comes out. While I was there, as with every manufacturer I visited, I wanted to see if I could find any secrets that I actually could reveal, but unfortunately Bambu Lab managed to hide them all away before I arrived.
Come on, they gotta be hiding some good secrets around here somewhere.
So excited about the future, but sworn to secrecy, I took a quick selfie video with the team and headed off to my next meeting at Sovol. After yet another lengthy but super cheap cab ride across Shenzhen, I arrived at Sovol, where the team was very busy preparing for the launch of their new SV07 Plus. There, I got a chance to see their showroom, sales offices, R&D offices, and their workshop where engineers were working on developing the next generations of Sovol printers. Of course, I can't say too much, but I will answer the question on everyone's mind and say that yes, I did indeed see some early Core XY prototypes that I think will be very interesting to those of you who maybe don't want to build a printer from scratch, and I did spend quite a bit of time sharing my inputs and feedback as to what I think customers would want in such a product. I'll admit that I was a bit surprised and maybe even a little disappointed at first by what I saw on the engineer's work table. But as they explained the logic, the thinking, and the strategy, and as we spitballed some of the different strategies to really differentiate the product from what's already on the market, I started to realize how this could be a fantastic continuation of the success that Sovol had with the SV06, and I'm actually now pretty excited to test the product out when it's finally ready. While the factory floor and assembly lines at Sovol were busy assembling an entirely different product that I unfortunately cannot show you, I did get to see them assembling some filament dryers, which was pretty cool because I actually didn't even realize Sovol made their own filament dryers. Then we headed over to the warehouse, which was a pretty crazy experience. I'm originally from Northern California, and I now live in Israel, two places where there is very little actual manufacturing, and definitely not a lot of warehousing. So seeing pallet after pallet, row after row of literally thousands of 3D printer boxes was pretty cool, and I took some time to record a few silly YouTube shorts while I was there. I didn't realize until after I left though, that this warehouse was just one of Sovol's worldwide warehouses, and that the SV07 Pluses that Sovol was currently in the process of marketing and selling would actually be shipped from local warehouses in the USA and Europe. Still, someone, somewhere will eventually get the SV07 Plus that I signed, so hopefully they'll reach out when it arrives. To be completely honest, I didn't plan to visit Comgrow, but when I arrived at Sovol, they let me know that Comgrow was actually very, very close by, and that unlike most of the bigger companies, Comgrow actually did their manufacturing there in that same facility. So I popped in unannounced, and I was pretty surprised to find them in full tilt manufacturing of that massive T500 that I recently had the chance to review. Some of you might remember that I had quite a few criticisms of the T500 during that review, but I was quite pleasantly surprised to see that the team had already implemented most of my feedback with plans to act on the rest too.
So I just stopped in actually to Comgrow's manufacturing facility, which is one of the few facilities that are in kind of central Shenzhen. Everything else is manufactured really far away. And here you'll remember that the biggest issue I had with the Comgrows was that the profiles were not tuned for bigger nozzles. So I'm really excited to see that they're doing a lot of profile tuning and a lot of testing. Right behind me, you can see and hear a lot of noise as they are assembling the T500s. Lots and lots and lots of T500s being made all throughout this facility. Really, really incredible to watch. I mean, obviously this printer comes mostly assembled, and these are the men and women who make sure that it comes fully assembled. You can see here some testing of the final electronics appears to be happening. Okay, so I have to express some excitement and appreciation for the Comgrow team, because you'll remember the other thing I really struggled with this printer was the issue of the clearance with the shroud hitting the existing print, because it did not clear enough over the nozzle. And it looks like they have already engineered or fixed. They're in the process of retooling to make that change based on that little piece of feedback that I put into my video, which is a huge honor, but also a huge compliment to how seriously they're taking improving the development of this printer. So good on you guys over at Comgrow.
To be honest, it's almost surreal to me that a company like Sovol or Comgrow would listen to design and engineering feedback from little old me, a YouTuber who started up just 1 year ago, has no engineering background, and is completely self-taught when it comes to 3D printing. Yes, I've been an entrepreneur and a marketer for over 20 years, and yes, I am their target demographic, and yes, I do have an MBA, but I'm still completely humbled, and I'm flattered that the engineers that make these awesome products actually want to hear what I have to say. After a few productive but long sessions at Sovol, Bambu Lab, and Comgrow, I still had a third meeting to get through that day, so I hopped in, you guessed it, another cab headed for Siboor. There, I was greeted by Emma, an early Creality team member who now leads Siboor's expansion efforts and who has been super helpful throughout the process of building the Siboor Voron 0.2 kit that I recently reviewed. For those of you who aren't familiar with Siboor or didn't see my new printer roundup video published last month, they're a relatively new company on the scene, at least to Western consumers, really gunning for a share of LDO and Physex's market share in the Voron kits segment. Their offices are predictably older and smaller than some of the more established 3D printer companies that I visit. While Siboor started out with super cheap AliExpress kits, they've really upped their game though, and they now not only sell super high quality CNC parts, but also offer custom colors for printed parts.
So the printed parts are not made here. They are made in Siboor's print farm, which is in a different city altogether. But they do have quite an inventory of printed parts. You can see behind me some stealth burners and some 2.4 parts. And as with my 0.2 kit, the quality of the printed parts is just insane.
In fact, they're one of the only companies I know of that offers 100% complete Voron kits with the boards, hot ends, and everything. And despite that fact, their prices are extremely competitive, often less than LDO's price for incomplete kits without parts or boards. There, I discovered that they had much more as far as product offerings than I realized, including CNC parts kits for the Voron 2.4, the aforementioned custom color printed parts, some exciting new upgrades for the 0.2, including their disco on a stick lighting system, a custom designed auxiliary fan kit, and a Kirigami bed with disco LEDs, which will be included on their future kits.
They are assembling a whole bunch of Voron kits behind me, And I learned that Siboor not only has the 0.2 that I built in a CNC version, but they also have the 2.4 in a CNC version, and just generally fully available, fully ready kits for the 2.4 switch wire and much, much more. Pretty much the entire Voron lineup ready to go, being packed and ready to ship right here.
Now, as I mentioned in the first video, I definitely have a soft spot for LDO motors, and their kits are still considered the gold standard, but I'm really excited to see Siboor leveling up their game. And for the price, I think that these kits are probably the best bang for your buck out there.
You guys might remember that I had complimented Siboor for their packaging, making everything really easy and readily available and accessible for the build. And that continues with the rest of their product lineup. You can see everything is packed in these tackle boxes or in this foam so that it is easy and ready to assemble. So you don't have to waste a lot of time looking for the parts during your build.
With my tour of Siboor over, it was time to head back to the hotel and see my family before another extremely busy day. The following day, I hopped in yet another cab. Can you tell that I spent an absurd amount of money on cabs in this trip? And I headed over to Shenzhen's exhibition center, where there were a bunch of different conferences going on, only one of which was FormNext South China. This, as I mentioned in the first video, was one of the events that AnyCubic invited me to, and part of that invitation meant coming to the show and covering the release of their new Wash and Cure Max. Well, I had a little mix up with the address, and I ended up in the middle of nowhere, and I missed the actual release of the Wash and Cure. Sorry guys. But fortunately, the AnyCubic team was super understanding, and I still was able to post the first footage online of the new product in the form of a YouTube short that did really well.
So I've done a little bit of investigation here because I couldn't understand where the alcohol is going while it is curing, right? It's only one button, it washes and it cures, and then I figure out that this sign was covering the two separate alcohol tanks. And what happens is inside you have a first stage filter, then you have a second stage filter, and then further on inside of each of the tanks, you have additional filters. And it's also taking clean alcohol, spraying and putting the reusable filtered resin in here just so that you're not contaminating the original resin. So I knew that there was going to be some challenging different solution for how they're reusing the resin without contaminating or kind of otherwise clogging the machine. And this is how they're doing it. Very ingenious solution for a one-touch washable wash and cure station. Really clever.
From there, I went about checking out the rest of the Cobra 2 series, which I actually hadn't had a chance to get my hands on until then. I was going to tour AnyCubic the following day, but since I had lots of time before the media dinner, I decided to film plenty of B-roll of these printers and also quiz the engineers on the features and differences of each of these different models, especially because AnyCubic expressed interest in sponsoring some videos, and I needed to make sure that the printers were something I could comfortably recommend to all of you. From there, I headed off to the rest of the show floor to see what types of consumer 3D printing goodies I could dig up. To be completely honest with you, the show was a bit of a bust when it comes to hobbyist 3D printing. It was a lot of industrial solutions such as metal 3D printing, ceramics, and powders, and overall, it was really small compared to FormNext Frankfurt that I attended last year. The only brands that I recognized were AnyCubic, eSun, Kexel, Cheeto Box, and Frozen. Though I did see a few other cool things and people that were worth my trip there. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I went, but I think that next time I go to Shenzhen, and there definitely will be a next time, I probably won't bother planning the trip around FormNext. After the show, AnyCubic's team were kind enough to take myself and some other media personnel out to a wonderful dinner, and I got to hop a ride with Dr. O Yang of AnyCubic back to my hotel, which gave us a great opportunity to prepare one-on-one for the next day's interview. I was up at 4 a.m. the next morning thanks to baby Eli, which turned out to be a blessing because there was a lot to do. AnyCubic's headquarters is located in Longgang, over an hour away from my hotel, and our live interview was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. That meant that I needed to be there at 8 in order to set up the lights, cameras, microphones, and more. AnyCubic's team was wonderful in helping me set things up, but Murphy's Law still did its thing, and so we had a ton of technical issues like lights burning out, capture cards not working, and YouTube just booting me off the live stream. Still, we persevered, and both the AnyCubic team and myself were really happy with how the interview turned out. Dr. Ouyang is the third CEO of a major 3D printing manufacturer to be on the podcast, and I'm honestly so honored when guests like him give me their time and answer my questions. From there, it was time for a quick tour of AnyCubic's facilities. Here again, we would look at R&D, sales, and support because the factory is far, far away. Because I was supposed to catch a flight from Hong Kong the next day, AnyCubic agreed to give me a private media tour rather than the group tour that was scheduled to happen the following day. In it, we got to check out AnyCubic's sales offices. All right, so now we are in the offices, and you can see behind me, we have all the folks working on the cloud department. You can tell because shout out to my brother rocking the standing desk. You know he's an engineer, tech type person with the standing desk. And then check this out. This is wild. Look how many offices of PR, intellectual property, and it just goes on like this. Look at this. Testing department. Hi. Hi, everyone. And that was stereolithography, industrial applications, it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. There's a lot of desks in here. All right, intellectual property department. There's got to be some juicy secrets here, right? Let's see what we got. That's all in Chinese. That's all in Chinese. I could be looking at the entire new product lineup and I wouldn't even know it because it's all in Chinese. So now we are in sales and marketing. And there's just more and more rows and rows and rows of people. Hi, everybody. Just continues and continues and continues. I don't like that show. Do you like that show? Terrible podcast. Terrible podcast. As well as their R&D and the team that works on their cloud infrastructure, which was way bigger than I expected, by the way. Like Creality, AnyCubic has an area where employees are really encouraged to print whatever they want for their own personal projects. And I'm glad because this was yet another place that I got a chance to play around with the new Cobra 2 series. AnyCubic also, like Creality, has a museum featuring their historic models, accomplishments, and patents, but of course, the latest models have not yet been added to the museum. One of the highlights of the AnyCubic tour was checking out their R&D and testing facility and seeing a few things that I didn't see anywhere else. So we are now at AnyCubic's R&D facility, I guess it's okay, not to be confused with their production manufacturing facility or their R&D facility for resin printers. This is strictly the facility where they are developing and testing their FDM series. You can see behind me a lot of the different Cobra machines, including the new series, the Cobra 2. There's some pretty interesting stuff happening in this room. You've got printers obviously everywhere doing all different kinds of prints. Some of the coolest things is just to see the printers that are on loops, doing millions and millions and millions of repetitions of the same movement over and over and over for forever, honestly, forever. This printer has been going the entire time I've been here, and it's just going and going and going. There's also some crazy machines in here. If you ever wonder how they know that machines will perform well in less than ideal environments, such as a print farm that can get really, really hot, they actually have a specialized oven. And this oven is set to 85% humidity, 60 degrees Celsius, and they can just leave it running for days on end and actually test printers and printer components right there in this
basically glorified oven. You've got obviously a lot of printers running a lot of different tests. Looks like this one is doing some kind of test to optimize extrusion. You've got other ones that look like they're optimizing different profiles. And you've got a bunch of engineers just constantly focused on how they can improve the look and quality of prints. Here's another interesting thing I discovered. Here you have compression strength testers. This is actually for testing the packages and the way that things are packaged in the box to ensure the integrity of the box so the product will actually arrive. So actually in this R&D facility, they're not only developing the printers, but they're also developing the way that they are flat packed so that they can ensure that there's not going to be any damage. And then I'll take you guys back to where we started. We've got all kinds of kind of crazy, scary machines that I'm not sure what they do, but I've been told these are for testing components. So here you can see they are testing micro switches millions and millions and millions of times, just repetitively testing those micro switches over and over and over. Here you've got different hardware for testing electronic components. Here you've got some boards hooked up and those boards are being tested. And then again, just a lot of printers printing a lot of different kinds of prints. And it's kind of fun to see that the professionals are using the same kinds of print tests. Wow, this is a very, very good extraction test. Very, very impressive extraction test. And it's just amazing to see that the professionals are literally using the same kinds of print tests that we consumers do. They're using this to print 80%. This one is at 8.2, whatever that means. And I even saw some benchies printing. So it's really kind of neat that the engineers themselves are using the exact kinds of print tests that we consumers use when we want to tune our prints. And there's a lot of them printing on all these different printers. We've got a benchy here. Over here, we've got what looks to be that same test block. We've got it now printing in white PLA. This is a tolerance test as well. Really, really cool.
With the tour over, it was time to bid my friends at AnyCubic goodbye, thank them once again for sponsoring my trip to Shenzhen, and then hop back in a cab for another hour-long ride to PCBWay. At this point, after a week of touring around various manufacturers, a 4 a.m. wake up, and a dozen or so hours in cabs, and much more, my brain was fried. And while that might have been okay to tour another run-of-the-mill R&D office or warehouse, it was definitely less than ideal for my next stop, which was PCBWay. Now, to be clear, PCBWay, who, by the way, agreed to sponsor this video so that I could produce not one, but 2 videos about my time in Shenzhen, does a whole lot more than just manufacturing custom PCBs. They do sheet metal manufacturing, industrial 3D printing, metal 3D printing, injection molding, CNC machining, honestly, any kind of fabrication you could possibly want, at a scale of 1 piece to 1 million, all with great service, great prices, and quick turnarounds. Unfortunately, their factories are spread out throughout China, meaning that the only ones that I would get to see in Shenzhen were their PCB fabrication facilities. In fact, Elaine, who heads influencer marketing at PCBWay and works with everyone from Stefan at CNC Kitchen to Alan Mandick and Angus from Maker's Muse, actually flew herself and her colleague Zoe, who both manage my account at PCBWay, out to Shenzhen for a few days just to meet me, which was super flattering, and I can only hope that this video will be worth their while. In any case, I would love to visit PCBWay's other factories in the future, so if you'd like to see that, drop a comment below, and hopefully on my next visit to China, I can check those out. When I arrived to PCB's factory, I was welcomed into the lobby, and immediately my mind was blown. I was met with a 300-degree wraparound screen which featured live, to-the-minute statistics of everything going on in the facility. Obviously, I can't read Chinese, but I was told that these screens show everything from how many employees are on site to electricity usage, machine capacity, order status, and many other statistics that I probably wouldn't even understand if they were in English. From there, we started the tour, and let me tell you, it was insane.
You guys, there are so many PCBs everywhere. This is crazy. We're now on the 2nd floor. And I can't even tell you what's happening in here.
We started by seeing how raw sheets of copper are chopped up into smaller ones for processing, followed by watching the automated drilling machines which drill and engrave the various holes and grooves in the PCBs, 5 identical sheets at a time, with 3 huge rows of these machines buzzing away.
As you can see here, we've got a whole bunch of drilling rigs. This is one of the first steps. In a minute, we're going to go in and check out the cutting, how we actually get the boards cut. Whoa, this guy looks like it's done. Just in time for us to harvest that PCB that has just been drilled. And it looks to me like it printed or cut and drilled 2 identical boards. Pretty amazing. And as you can see, they have quite a few lines of these drilling machines. Each one of them has, oh my, 6 heads, and they just drill the PCB before it goes on to the next steps.
Starting at the beginning like that had me hoping that we were going to get to follow the process in a step-by-step fashion so that I could see how some boards were created from start to finish. However, because of time constraints and the need to both gear up in different kinds of clean suits for different areas and to meet with different managers who would manage different parts of the process and thus tour us in different areas, we weren't able to go in a linear fashion. And between the language barrier and the fact that my translators, Elaine and Zoe, work in sales and marketing rather than engineering, I'll be honest and say that I came out of this tour with many more questions than when I went into it.
Hello, here comes to our image expose.
So here image exposure is happening, but really more of what's happening is Elaine and I have realized Elaine is in marketing.
Yeah.
And so it's really a case of the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
We're both just trying to figure out what the hell all this stuff does. We're pretty sure that this machine does image exposure with ultraviolet light. So you've got here before
This is before image.
and after.
Yeah, right.
But really, honestly, this stuff is so confusing. How long have you worked in this industry?
In PCBWay?
Yeah.
More than 5 hours. Oh,
5 years, and
yeah,
still
5 years.
this stuff is very complicated
Yeah, it's
to us.
pretty complicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand how plastic PCBs work, and I did get to see some of those being made, but I'm still really unclear on exactly how the circuitry works in this type of board. Nonetheless, I nodded and smiled my way through the various steps of the PCB manufacturing process, which, after doing some at-home research, I now know involves pre-engineering, board cutting, inner layer, lamination, drilling, electroplating, application of the outer layer, pattern etching, automatic optical inspection, solder mask, legend printing, surface finish, profile, electrical test.
All right, let's continue our walk down pack in place. This is gonna check the boards. Computer's gonna make sure that they're good. And then they are going to go through a series of pack in place machines, which are going to progressively add more and more of these components. This literally is like the only part of the process that I fully understand how it works. These machines are putting additional pieces on. They're going down the assembly line, and robots are putting on. Then we get here to the soldering station. You can see here it heats it up at 130 to 140 to 150 all the way to the last section, which is 245. It even hits 265 before that. This runs it through all the different heat stages. And when we get to the end of the line, we have perfectly finished, beautiful PCBs with all the components soldered on them.
FQC and packaging. I realize I went through that like a train passing through in the night, but if you want to learn more, PCBWay actually has a full video on each one of these processes on their channel that I can link to below. Also, I know that PCBWay is the sponsor of this video and all, but real talk, the fact that they do all of those steps in 24 hours and then sell you 10 pieces like that for a whopping $5 literally blows my mind. and it gives you an idea of the serious economies of scale they're dealing with. It also, hopefully, will earn me some grace with you guys when I say that I was, and honestly still am, so confused about how all this technology works and comes together. But hey, the B-roll is pretty fun to watch, and I have a newfound appreciation for the engineering marvel that is a finished PCB. So, in case you haven't already, do make sure to check out the link in the description or visit jle.vi/PCBWay to get your sign-on bonus and level up your next project with any of PCBWay's myriad services. So there you have it, my marathon tour of most, though certainly not all, of Shenzhen's 3D printing scene. There were some other little things and unreleased products here and there that I left out, but I've tried to do my best to give you guys the full download of everything I saw and experienced during this incredible trip. Overall, I came away with a lot of conclusions and changed perceptions, not just about 3D printing or Chinese companies, but about Shenzhen and about China as a whole. This isn't yes theory, so I'll spare you guys my big, fluffy, feel-good conclusions about how we all just want the same things. I will say, however, that things seem to be changing so fast, not just in consumer 3D printing, but also in both Shenzhen and in China. And I think it's time for many of us, myself included, to update our perceptions and our information when we think about these things. My family and I had a truly incredible time visiting this wonderful city, full of some of the most generous, kind, and welcoming people we've ever met. And my wife and I both agreed that we would happily move our family there for a year or two if the opportunity presents itself. Hint, hint. I want to once again thank AnyCubic for sponsoring my first ever trip to China, crossing off a major item on my bucket list, and for being so understanding about the fact that I wanted to visit other companies while I was there too. For more on that experience and what surprised me about the dynamic between all these different companies, do make sure to check out my podcast interview with Dr. James Oliang, founder of AnyCubic, which we recorded together in person at their offices in Shenzhen. Before you leave, I would love it if you just drop down in the comments real quick and let me know what your favorite part of this series was. What was most interesting to you? What would you like to see more of? What parts were boring? And would you be interested in more videos like this in the future? I'm honestly looking for another excuse to get back there and see some more. And with all that, I'll thank all of you for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters who've been getting exclusive content and behind-the-scenes footage throughout this whole adventure. That's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.